Yo guys, what is up? Max in our first Descendant video, and today we're going to be going over the top 5 best Descendants in TFD. Now, this is going to be an interesting video because obviously what classifies a Descendant as best, we're going to be going over our criteria, our guidelines, and why I'm ranking characters the way that I am. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So the first thing to talk about is what is the criteria for this list. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is probably the hardest time it's ever been to make a top 5 because all of the Descendants are so competitive with each other. A lot of the Descendants that were once memes are now really good. So many Descendants have been buffed, and they're all like very, very competitive with each other. And so to make this list, we used a few criteria. So the first is we are mainly looking at what Descendants excel in doing the core content of the game. So I graphed out all of the Descendants and their fastest times for Void Erosion Purge Challenge Level 5, and that is a good metric to judge the Descendants on, but most players are not speedrunning Void Erosion Purge Challenge 5 because you don't really get rewards for doing that. It's kind of like a one-time thing. Most players are going to be farming Void Erosion Purge 10. And so we reference the leaderboards, but we're not using it as a foundation for this list because what really matters is how fast can you run the hard void vessels? How fast can you do supermassive receptor? What's your clear time on the exposed underwater base? And we did take into account bossing. I don't think bossing is quite as important as it used to be in this game. Wall Crasher, you're only killing once every hour, and you're doing it with a ton of other players. The boss is like kind of like a flavor of the month for the Abyss boss. You know, you've got, for example, Descendants like Keelan, who is dominating Stormhanger, but like as soon as Stormhanger is not the boss of the episode, then the like boss meta completely changes because of their elemental weaknesses. And so I didn't think too much about like who's best at like killing Infernal Walker currently because it's just kind of irrelevant. Descendants that are, you know, consistently strong at bosses will, you know, have some leeway into this list, but like the best boss for one specific boss, or the best Descendant for one specific boss, doesn't really have much sway with me. So that's kind of the main core agenda of what we're looking at in this list is how efficient are you at clearing like 90% of the content that like really matters for Descendants to be able to be good at. And then the other thing that we were taking into consideration is what Descendants function really well without crazy rolled ancestor modules. There's a lot of builds in this game right now that only function are only worth building if you have like 250% increased crit rate on your ancestor mod, and that's just not realistic for most players. And so we are prioritizing Descendants that are great at all of the content in the game, that don't need ancestor modules to succeed, and are very well rounded, and that's where our top 5 list is coming from. I polled my Twitch chat extensively over the course of like 5 hours on basically every position on this list, and I consulted with the leaderboards, and I chatted with a few of my buddies who have over 3,000 hours on this game. We kind of all agreed on this list. Obviously, you know, opinions are going to differ, but I hope you guys enjoy the list. I hope you find it informative. Let's do this. So coming in at our number 5 spot is Hailey. Now, Hailey was very, very strong when she came out. However, she had some weaknesses in that she was really good at killing bosses, but a little slow and not the greatest mobber. If you haven't played the game recently, Hailey was reworked, and they gave her a new or updated Transcendent module, Cold Heart, which transforms her 4th ability to Arctic Domination. Basically, this allows you to do a massive radius explosion that hits enemies really, really hard. However, if you pair that with her 1 ability, you can actually debuff enemies to take multiplicative damage prior to your explosion. And with really low cooldowns, you can constantly spam her 1 to debuff enemies and increase your ability damage. With her 3 buff active, which gives you tons of skill crit, and then her 4 to blow up screens of enemies, and her 2 to take down any like more tanky single target. Her 2 still hits for some of the highest ability damage. It's crazy. And so this is the build we are rocking on Hailey. By the way, for all of the characters on this list. We're going to be going over one build. A lot of these characters will have multiple builds. I'm going to pick one build to highlight, and also I'll be flashing their like RK tuning and everything, so it should just display all at once. But this is going to be our build for Hailey. For your Ancestor module, you're really just looking for as much crit damage as you can get. Cooldown is nice as well, but she gets tons of crit chance very, very easily from her third, plus some crit rate. So crit rate, crit damage, and cooldown are all really nice to look for on an Ancestor module. For the Hailey build, you're going to want to rock a chill singular reactor with crit damage and cooldown. For components, we're rocking a polar knight set with max HP and defense tuning on all of your pieces. And then showing on screen is your RK tuning and also your inversion reinforcements. Coming in at our number 4 spot is Daya. Now, Daya is incredibly strong. I've tried to remove recency bias because currently Abyss Walker is the boss of the season, who's very, very weak to chill damage, and Daya does a ton of chill damage. However, even on like non-chill bosses or chill weak bosses, she pumps tons of damage. She's got great mobbing. She's speedy. Her single target burst is crazy. She groups. There's not really anything that she's particularly bad at. Her mobbing isn't quite as crazy as some other characters, but she still excels in all different scenarios. For her mobbing build, Daya's got two very, very different setups for mobbing and bossing. If you want a full breakdown of all of her setups, I will have a link down in the description to my full like Daya build guide that will explain everything. But for mobbing, we're going to be mainly using her Blooming Ecstasy module. This allows her Snowflake Clash or Snowflake to trigger off of skill damage rather than melee damage, which allows her to go full like ability caster spam and not really worry too much about using swords. So you can use her third ability to group up enemies and then buff yourself with your second to give you increased skill crit damage, delete enemies with her Snowflake Clash. You can use this to both pin enemies and also use it to detonate your third ability to do massive AoE damage. And then you basically spam her Frost Bloom off of cooldown. The amount of damage that she puts out is just crazy. For the like build, we're mainly going to be focusing on crit. Daya very, very easily hits 100% crit rate without even using skill insight, so she can really hone in on using tons of damage. She also has really high modifier values, so you don't really need any modifier mods. On your Ancestor module, you're mainly looking for crit damage and cooldown. Cooldown is really important on Daya. I know we're not basing builds on like Ancestor modules, but even without an Ancestor module, she still is really strong. But getting cooldown helps a ton because a lot of her abilities do have long cooldowns. For her Reactor and Components, if you are playing solo, I'd recommend using the Bravery set so you can spam her fourth ability. If you're playing in a group or co-op, I'd recommend Polar Knight. The Reactor, you're looking for cooldown and crit damage with Chill Fusion. And then showing on screen is her tuning for her RK tuning and also her inversion reinforcements. For our number 3 Descendant, it's going to be Freyna. Now, Freyna, when she got her like ultimate version, was really strong for quite a while. And then she started to fall behind in the meta, mainly because of her lack of single target damage. However, she's received some pretty substantial buffs and also new tools in her kit to make her significantly stronger. The first of those was her fourth ability, her unique weapon, Venom Baptism, now gets extra benefits from if your weapon is cored, which was a pretty massive buff. They've also given her some of the stronger like trigger modules in Infected Weapon, which amps up her single target a ton. Infected Weapon paired with Infection Amplifier is a huge damage increase for her. And that also paired with Ancestor Modules allows her to like really rise and not only be a super dominant mobber, but she can also put out some very, very silly single target damage with her 4th. And there's a lot of builds you can rock on Freyna. The one that I personally enjoy the most is using Toxic Stimulation to give yourself a defense buff and extra duration. You can use Contagion if you want. Her Transcendent module out of Toxic Stimulation, Venom Synthesis, and Contagion doesn't matter a whole lot. They're all built pretty much the same. The big difference is that if you're rocking Contagion, you have a little bit more AoE spread, but your damage goes down because you lose the additional modifier values on all of your abilities. So usually not rocking that. And then the like most damage you can get out of Freyna, her highest damage module is Venom Injection. This allows her to do extra damage, but mainly shred resistances to Toxic, which is a massive multiplier for her damage. And she can get relatively tanky with Venom Injection. The big issue with it is it drains your health and it drains your mana. So Venom Injection build has to build very differently. Showing on screen is a Venom Injection build that should be very solid, balances some tankiness with quality of life and damage. I wouldn't bring this into trash mobbing because you don't need it. We don't have quite as much range on this setup, but getting some quality of life with increased shield, overwhelming shield, and infection amplifier. On your Transcendent module for Freyna, unless you're going a crit build on her, which you can do. I'm not going to show off her crit build right now, but I will have an updated Freyna guide very soon. But you're going to be rocking, ideally looking for cooldown and extra tech modifier or toxic. And then for like general use, I really like rocking 2 range mods, skill expansion, and amplification control. Throw in some damage, some cooldown, infection amplifier, and make sure you're rocking infected weapon. She will just tear through things. For Freyna's Reactor, you're going to be rocking Toxic Tech Reactor. Freyna doesn't need cooldown on her Reactor. It's still nice to have, but it's not as important on some of the other characters. Mainly because Freyna's poison will carry over and transfer, so you can like cast it in one room and it'll kill the next room over. So I mainly go for a full damage boost on her with Toxic and Tech boosts, as well as using the Plague set for tons of extra damage. This gives us a lot of Toxic skill power, which is part of the reason why on a lot of her builds we're using power increase to balance out her damage formula. And then for her weapons, we're really looking for the Fallen Hope and the Secret Garden. The Fallen Hope you can build out if you want to, but just holding it is a fantastic stat stick for Freyna. This was buffed fairly recently to now give you stacking Toxic skill power, which is really, really, really great. If you don't have a Fallen Hope for it, afford in its unique ability, you can still use the Secret Garden, still great on her, but I do prefer the Fallen Hope. And then showing on screen is her Arcade Tuning and Inversion Reinforcements. Coming in our number 2 spot is Glay. Now, Glay was recently buffed, and her buffs are really freaking strong. Glay's in a really, really cool spot right now in that she has both strong builds with guns and also abilities. Her gun builds are really, really dominant for bossing, but they can be great for mobbing as well with the right weapon. And then her ability spam builds with some of her reworked Transcendent modules allow her to do some crazy, crazy damage even after the nerfs. Few builds that we could showcase. This is my weapon platform build for Glay. This is specifically for running around and clearing mobbing content. The big difference with kind of a mobbing and a bossing Glay build is for mobbing with guns, you're going to want to use super senses because it allows you to get extra movement speed while you're shooting. It's going to give you extra crit damage and weak point damage with your guns. The big downside to super senses is it lowers the duration of your third ability. So if you just want to shoot at a boss, you can use Predator Instincts. which will allow you to have a little bit longer duration of your 3 and get slightly more firearm attack out of your 1. And then if you want to do like mobbing, you'd use super senses. Wouldn't change too much about the build regardless. But another thing that's new with Glay is her trigger module, focus and expansion, which this allows her to do bonus AoE damage while you're shooting at enemies based off of your HP, very similar to Serena. If you pair this with a weapon that's already good at doing AoE damage, that this is doing even more AoE damage, really helps with her like mobbing clear with guns. For most of the mobbing on Glay, I really like using the Thunder Cage, but there are some great other options. And then we're going to be wanting to build around, I believe it was 35k or 36k HP to get the most out of focus and expansion and her other HP buffs. If that's a wrong number, it'll be fixed on screen in text. And then just running a lot of quality of life with shot focus, a bunch of skill extensions, and a ton of cooldowns so we can have her 3 looping constantly. Gun Glay, your reactor doesn't really matter. You're mainly looking for duration and cooldown. Your components, we're going to be rocking 2-piece ascending set for the skill cost, but mainly the big HP rolls, and then 2-piece shell crusher. Fire rate is great, but it also gives us a bunch of extra HP. Our HP is very important for the weapon platform build. As you can see, I'm at 36,000 to get the full benefit of our build. And then I mainly rock the Thunder Cage on her. These are the cores. We're looking for electric attack, firearm attack, crit damage, fire rate, and then recoil. With electric attack, crit damage, ignore the Colossus, that shouldn't be there. It should be crit rate, and then the Colossus should be rolled to firearm attack. And then these are the mods we're rocking on the Thunder Cage, mainly focusing on crit damage and electric damage with sharp precision shot, which allows us on infinite ammo Descendants to just hold down the trigger and do tons of damage. And showing on screen is her arcade tuning and inversion reinforcements. Before we get to our number 1 spot, we have to go over some honorable mentions because, to be honest, Descendant balance in this game is currently in a pretty good spot. There is a lot of characters that you could put in this top 5, and I wouldn't bat an eye. There's so many great choices. Of the characters that just barely didn't make the list would be Ajax. Ajax is really strong with guns right now, super powerful. However, he is a little bit slower because you have to spend so much time casting abilities, and he doesn't have a niche that he does much better than some of the other characters. Bunny also very close to making this list. Bunny's got much improved single target. Her speed is always good. Her damage is great. Inez with the new E-Buster, also tons of damage. Improves her like single target issues. She still does have single target issues. And Inez is getting a new Transcendent module very soon, so I think she's going to be really strong. Valby has been a consistent top boss killer. Her mobbing is much better now as well. Vyasa does a ton of damage. Alt Luna's really good. Alt Lepic is one of the best mobbing characters in the game right now. There's so many characters that you could put on this list that definitely deserve a mention. Fortunately, this is a very tight list, and it was pretty easy to decide like the top 3. Past that was, very much up to debate. But yeah, ton of characters could have made this list that you could argue that should be on this list, and I wouldn't disagree with you. It just is really that tight. But at our number 1 spot is Serena. Serena is a character that I don't like off of this simple fact that I think she has genuinely hurt the first Descendant massively. When they introduced this character, she brought levels of power creep and damage to this game that we've never seen before, and the devs have now spent basically a year balancing and buffing every Descendant to her level. She is incredibly strong because not only does she have high skill damage builds, but she has high gun damage builds. She's incredibly versatile. She is unbelievably tanky, and she doesn't have any downsides. In the current climate of the game, the devs have intentionally added resistances and ways for enemies to not take as much damage from Serena's kit. And so I don't think Serena is the best boss killer, and I don't think she's the best mobber. In fact, there's other characters that do those things a little bit better than Serena. However, Serena has been consistently one of the top choices and is consistently strong. She's a character that if you fully build her out, there is no activity that you are at like a disadvantage going into the game. She is just really strong all around, and doesn't really have much weaknesses. So while she's not the best boss killer or the best mobber, she is very, very close to both. And I think she is a super well-rounded Descendant. The fact that the entire game has had to been changed to accommodate for her presence is a sign of that. And so our Serena is our number one. So Serena also has a ton of ways to be built. The build that I'm going to be showcasing / highlighting is just kind of a general gun build with tons of quality of life. One of the craziest things about Serena is her fourth ability that does massive AoE damage. Basically just scales off of your HP. You don't need to build like tons of skill damage to really boost this up. And so she can focus on a ton of quality of life and survivability with things that increase the uptime of her fourth, so she can always have this active and reduce mana cost so that she can stay flying while spamming her third ability to reload and just dominate basically everything. So for this build, we're going to be rocking double HP mods with skill extension and maximize duration so that she can upkeep all of her buffs. Skill expansion for the range that we need for her abilities, damage to hit everything, double cooldown, maximize conservation for some extra skill cost. And lastly, on her Transcendent module, the main thing you're looking for on her is cooldown and HP. Definitely not needed to make her good, but some extra cooldown, if you have it, is really nice because you can just have 100% uptime on her fourth ability. If you don't have a Ancestor mod for her, just use Multi-Talented. That'll give you the cooldown that you need, and then you can just hit your third ability, which will proc your Multi-Talented buff, and then you can use your fourth, or just use your fourth when Multi-Talented is available to give it 100% uptime. For weapons on Serena, the Restored Relic is fantastic. The Ancient Knight is great. However, the newly buffed Typhoon is probably my favorite mobbing weapon on her. For that, this is the build we're rocking. Tons of focus on electric damage and crit chance and crit damage. We're using Sweeping Squad because we're using this as a mobbing weapon. And then for our cores and base stats, fire rate, firearm attack, electric attack, ×2, firearm crit with firearm attack, firearm crit rate, electric attack, and firearm crit damage. Your reactor doesn't matter too much, mainly just looking for duration and cooldown. Skill cost is nice as well. I prefer duration and cooldown. On her components, we're rocking 2-piece Ascending for the extra skill cost, but also the tons of base HP. And then 2-piece Shell Crusher for the extra HP and the fire rate. And then showing on screen is her RK tuning and also her inversion reinforcements. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I've been covering TFD for over a year now, and I don't think I've ever made like a top 5 Descendants video, mainly because the meta is constantly changing, and it's a little bit hard to do, honestly, because all of the Descendants are good. They were good back then. They're good now. So if you have any ideas to improve the format of this or anything you'd like to see, let me know. Once again, I was originally thinking about doing like bossing and mobbing, but bossing's not super important right now, and it changes constantly. I was thinking about maybe doing the best attribute Descendants, like best fire Descendant, but I thought that was a little weird. I think maybe we'll end up doing a longer video and putting all of the Descendants in a tier list. I think that could be a lot of fun. No build guides included in that because that would take forever. But in my opinion, these are the top 5 kind of like must-have, must-build Descendants. They're really strong. They'll do all of the content for you. They have very little weaknesses. And they've been strong not just for this very snippet in time, but they seemingly should be strong for quite a while. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown and the build video. I will catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.